Some other news coming outside of the card as well. In the post-fight press conference, Dana White stated that unfortunately, it looks like Dustin Poirier versus Tony Ferguson is unsalvageable. We could go into the reasons why. I'm sure it's a contract negotiation, and Poirier is pretty much pointed to that, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But in terms of Ferguson's next fight, right? Sounds like White wants to keep him on the UFC 254 card if possible. Not sure if that's going to be able to, come to fruition or not. But now that Poirier is out of the mix, who should Tony fight?
Man, it's real unfortunate that this fight has fallen apart because that's amazing fight on paper. Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson is just fireworks. That's like can't miss TV. But here we are. The fight has fallen apart for apparently Dustin wanted too much money. UFC is going to be like, no, we're not in the business of paying you guys. So Tony Ferguson, if you go down the rankings, obviously it's Tony Ferguson at 3, Conor at 4, Dan Hooker at 5, Charles Oliveira at 6. And that is my pick. I want Charles Oliveira. I know he just withdrew from a fight due to quote unquote personal reasons. So unless, those personal reasons extend through the rest of the year, I don't see why he wouldn't be able to step in and take this fight against a guy that is ranked 3 spots ahead of him. Is a super exciting fight and a fight that would do a lot for your career. You go out there and get a finish or get a win, even just over Tony Ferguson. So that's the type of fight that I want to see, because Charles Oliveira is a guy that has he been in a boring fight? I can't recall one. If you do remember one, please let me know off the top of your head. But yeah, he's an exciting fighter, man. He goes out there and looks for finishes. He's crazy good on the ground, can lock you up from anywhere. And his hands have gotten better over his career too. So this is the type of fight that I think would be just pure fireworks. Wouldn't have that same name value as a Dustin Poirier, but matchup wise could be just bananas from beginning to end.
Yeah, I love that fight. I think it's a great call. Charles Oliveira has looked, ever since returning back up to lightweight, right, has just looked unreal. He's always had the submission game. I believe he still holds the record for the most submissions in the UFC. Yeah. But now he's adding knockouts to his resume. I mean, he's just looked like a monster. And I think Tony Ferguson versus Oliveira offers so many layers of where I love the Dustin Poirier Tony Ferguson fight on paper. I think it would be a banger. I think it'd be a stand-up war. What I love about Oliveira versus Ferguson is that you could have the stand-up, but you could also have some crazy ground game submission, back and forth defense. That could turn into a whole, high-level BJJ match in the middle of an MMA fight. So I think that pick is amazing. Outside of Oliveira, I would love to see the guy that Poirier just beat, Dan Hooker, go in there with Ferguson. I mean, that was a really competitive fight. Honestly, it was more competitive than I thought it was going to be. I thought Poirier was just going to outbox him, just kind of steamroll him, especially after what Barbosa did to Hooker. He just didn't look to have the same striking level, but Hooker has made leaps and bounds in his game, and that was a great, great fight. I mean, Poirier versus Hooker was beyond my wildest dreams in terms of how good and how close that was. And I think Hooker would give a lot of problems, some of the same problems that he gave Poirier. I think he could give those same problems to Ferguson, where Ferguson might have to try and figure him out and kind of deal with that guy who's always in your face, who doesn't go away, just eats shots, won't go down, regardless of what you throw at him. That could be a crazy good fight. So that's my pick outside of Oliveira, but I think either of those two are again, not the same name value as Poirier, but are still fireworks on paper.
100%. That's another fantastic matchup, man. My only hiccup on that is that both guys will be coming off ridiculous ass whoopings, so to speak, where they're both battered and bloodied to hell. But matchup wise, stylistically, that'd be a fantastic fight. It would just, again, it's just one of those fights where both guys are just going to go to the middle and like nobody's going to back down. And it could create all sorts of crazy exchanges, crazy moments in fights where guys are rocked. Both guys, like one guy gets rocked, the other guy gets rocked, but neither one of them are like, they just don't go away. Neither one of them. They will eat all of the damage in the world. And that's just like 2 zombies in there just throwing down. That would be incredible to watch. If you figure out a way to get either one of those fights, I would be happy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good point that both of them just came off of crazy wars, and that they could be having that be their next fight could end up being they both go in there and like one shot and it's over because they just don't have the chin strength after what they've both gone through anymore, especially that fast of a turnaround. But that being said, yeah, if either of those fights are on paper, and especially if you can get it added to that already stacked UFC 254 card, I would be so happy, especially since that's in Fight Island. We're much less likely to get those crazy pullouts because of the way Abu Dhabi is treating the pandemic and the strict scrutiny in terms of people being quarantined, not allowed outside of the bubble, all of that. I don't think you're going to get, these last minute cancellations that we've gotten over the past several weeks. So if you book either of those fights, I'm all about it. Now, let me ask you this. In either scenario, who wins that fight? Let's start with Oliveira versus Ferguson. Who takes home the W for you?
Man, depending on what types of personal issues that Charles Oliveira is dealing with, we don't know. So I'm just going to assume that it is the same Charles Oliveira that we saw last time. If that same Charles Oliveira shows up, I'm going to say he could pull up that upset, man. And I would probably be looking towards that upset, especially for Tony Ferguson coming off his loss. Now, assuming that saying that Tony Ferguson is going to drop 2 in a row, like that's crazy talk in a lot of ways. But I like Oliveira for the upset. I do.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite here. I'm going to go Ferguson, although I could totally see the upset to be that's a pick'em fight in terms of it. It's going to depend on Oliveira's personal reasons. It's going to depend on Tony, how Tony looks when he comes back after that crazy fight with Gaethje. Is he still I don't go away Tony, in and out, constant strikes, craziness. Like if he's still the same old Tony, I think that could provide some trouble for Oliveira. But Tony has also always had issues with his chin, right? And in the sense that he always gets rocked in almost every fight he's in. Lando Venata essentially staked his entire UFC career by rocking Tony Ferguson in the second round. So I think that's definitely a pick 'em, but I'd lean Tony in that one. Now let's switch it over to Hooker. Hooker versus Ferguson. Who do you have there?
Oh, man. In this one, I would probably lean a little bit more towards Tony Ferguson. Just because both guys, they're so, like, Tony, I think, has a little bit more diverse ground game than Dan Hooker. I think he scrambles a little bit better. But if this is a fight that stayed purely on the feet, which, Tony Ferguson, hey, he'll stand in there and just get beat to hell. He doesn't care. It could very well turn out to be that type of fight. But if I'm looking at the totality of their games, I like Tony Ferguson's overall game better than Dan Hooker's. So in that one, I would go with Tony Ferguson. But it's still a close, ridiculous fight. Probably goes to, fight of the night type thing, all that madness.
Yeah, I think both of these fights are fight of the night written all over it, just in terms of how amazing they'd be. But I mean, providing they made it out of the first round, right? But
yeah.
That being said, in this one, I think it's a little bit less of a pick 'em and a little bit more favorable to Tony. I still would, I don't know, if I was making odds here, I'd still say like 135 or negative 150 for Tony and plus 125 or something for Hooker. Nothing crazy. But but I mean, his overall game, I agree. Tony's just got more tools in the toolbox. And while Hooker has power, he hasn't at least demonstrated crazy knockout power, one-punch knockout power very often. I believe he has 1 or 2 fights where he's gotten a first-round KO from a big shot, but even then, in those fights, he's tend to, pour it on a bit. It's not like, first punch thrown and he's out. So I think because it would require some volume and some setting up, and because Tony has all of those, tools and just has that awkward style, which I think would be a real problem for Hooker. I think it'd be an amazing fight, but I'd lean a little bit more Tony on that one as well.
For sure. I guess before we wrap this up, can I offer up a third one? I know I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. Can I offer up a third opponent? It's a guy that everybody loves. He's a real fan favorite, and it's the first guy. Figure out a way to freaking pay Dustin Poirier. Make it happen in the UFC. What are we doing here? Pay Dustin Poirier. Somebody tweeted out like the whole list of fights that he's been in, like the last 6. They were all performance bonuses, fights of the nights, and everything. He's one of the most exciting fighters in the whole world right now. Pay him his money.
I mean, that is quite the curveball, but I mean, I guess playing devil's advocate here. Why would you pay Dustin Poirier another, let's say what, he was making 150 grand, I believe, for show and win his last fight against Hooker. So let's say we bump it up. Why would you give him another extra $100,000 to pay him $250,000 to show and win when you can pay Alistair Overeem $800,000 to show and win? I don't know, man. To me, why would you do that?
I was thinking of like a real rebuttal right there, and he threw a curveball right back at me. Hey, oh man, hey, I like it though. I like it.
It is a real rebuttal, and it's happening. I still can't even believe that. That's a whole other rabbit hole of a dude. Which I love the Reeb. Don't get me wrong, big fan of the Reeb, but to be paid more than pretty much all champions in terms of base pay is just, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, fighter pay is UFC. Dana doesn't care about the money. Didn't you see that interview clip? He doesn't care, man. So must be something else.
You have another 3 hours to dive into fighter pay issues.
Not on this video, but I will have you come on to the Fight Business podcast sometime, and all we'll do is just talk about fighter pay for an hour. That'll be easy.
In.